Abhijit, what are some of the challenges wealthy families in India face?
No different than wealthy families have all over the world. It's about putting wealth in a tax efficient manner which lasts and keeps the generations together. The businesses are incentivized in a manner that would last the test of time. And I mean, like it is worldwide, trust structures are increasingly getting popular, and more and more implemented. Especially the unique part about India is that we still don't have a state tax, and therefore we are guarding against a prospective statute if it is to come, and that's where the interesting challenges lies. But I don't think it's materially different than what you'd see in other parts of the world.
And why are trust structures becoming more popular?
It's because in the last in 20 years of Indian economic evolution, 10 years the Indian entrepreneur has probably spent a lot of time in making money. Now suddenly they realize that they're sitting on a serious amount of wealth, and when you are sitting on serious amount of the wealth, the questions are similar all around the world, and therefore the trust structures are increasingly getting popular, from asset protection, from longevity to family businesses, and estate duty protection if it comes up.
What are some of the main considerations when transferring wealth to the next generation?
I think the main considerations would be the complexity of the businesses. The Indian businesses tend to be pretty complex and spread over many companies. So we have cases where there are 200 companies, 300 companies. The appetite for the next generation to deal with complexities and carry on what their parents and grandparents did. And I think this is a very intangible assessment which the family needs to do before putting it in a structure which is very difficult to unwind. So this becomes, to my mind, one of the more important evaluations. And then, of course, is the trodden path in terms of tax saving, in terms of estate duty saving, in terms of control. But those are, to my mind, pretty much navigable. So what makes it unique in the Indian context is the willingness and the ability of the next generation to handle complexities.
This is obviously a large opportunity. What is the challenge the industry faces to make the most of it?
It's not an evolved proposition out here, and therefore the patriarch of the family doesn't want to lose control. And since it's not that trodden like what you've seen in your part of the world, the loss of control is the biggest impediment. Loss of control can be mitigated, but then you get exposure to estate duty issues. So balancing the two is somehow a little more difficult to convince to the patriarch of the family, and that, to my mind, is the single biggest challenge.
What's the competency of advisors that claim to add value around wealth planning?
I think quite good, but obviously there is scope for improvement. I think that there are two aspects to it. Now, one is the evolution of practice itself, because if you see in the last 20 years we've been without estate duty tax, and therefore succession planning and wealth planning was not that much prevalent. So it's maturing of the institutions out here on the subject. That's one. Two, as Indian wealth gets more global, complexity of handling in multiple jurisdictions, multiple laws, multiple succession issues, multiple tax issues gets increasingly complex, and therefore there is a scope of improvement in terms of assimilation of all these practice areas and all these jurisdictional knowledges. And that's where I think the other part where the evolution is taking place, in terms of intermingling of professionals from various jurisdictions and working together. And I guess this is one such event.
How would you articulate the opportunity that exists in India?
Actually, this entire thing goes hand in hand with wealth creation. And wealth creation is typically has taken place quite concentratedly in the last 2 decades in emerging markets, in India and China being one of the drivers on that. And there is obviously much more to go in terms of creation of wealth, and therefore the growth potentials are much higher in all industries, including this industry. And therefore, I think India is will be one of the go-to destinations for this as we continue to create wealth.